Have good morning, good afternoon. Oh, just sorry. So, Laith Marouf, I'm François Martin. I'm very happy to meet you. I've been traveling as a salesman for about 40 years, but I have many friends, Lebanese friends, but mostly in African countries. Not in Lebanon. I don't know very well Lebanon, but I'm very happy. What I propose you is that Abdel Jalil have passed me questions, very structuring questions, but as I am supposed usually to be an interviewed I will put on the questions and I propose you will answer both to the question, which maybe we can have a little differences in an interpretation. I'm not so sure, but if you like it, we can do like that. Is it okay for you?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So the project is called the collapse of the project in the Middle East? Question mark. Then question number 1 is the following. Since October 7, 2023, the Middle East has experienced dramatic political and military changes. From your perspective, what are fundamentally changed in the regional balance of power and who has emerged stronger or weaker? What do you think?
Yeah, well, it seems like the people that designed October 7th and Al-Aqsa flood were visionaries. They had clearly understood that the effects of their actions will reverberate on a global scale. And most probably also they knew that they are not going to survive to see the results of their actions. So October 7th changed the world, not only changed the situation of Palestine. Remember, before October 7th, Palestine was almost forgotten. Much of the Arabic vassal regimes had signed on to the Abraham Accords, and there was all the war in Ukraine and the war in Syria, and that were clearly higher in the priority of global attention. Since then, number one, we saw the exposing of Israeli power to be actually fake. We saw how a small band of fighters in an extermination camp that's besieged the Gaza Strip were able to fight to a standstill the whole combined Western power, not only the Israeli power. For 3 years right now, they haven't been defeated. Yes, at the same time, we saw the Zionists and the imperialists expose their bloodlust and their genocidal aims and work. So we all together watched a broadcasted genocide unlike any other genocide that humanity has seen. And at the same time, the whole imperialist order governed from Washington, D.C., kind of dispensed all its soft power and its military power to try to defend this Jewish colony, this Jewish exclusionist colony. And that is not only the issue of the use of all the weapons that we saw the West waste in this war, but 100 years of accumulated propaganda in the minds of humanity about Western supremacy, liberalism, democracy, human rights, international law, women's rights, children's rights, all of that, dumped in the garbage by the collective West, all to defend the existence of this Jewish supremacist colony, right? And to make sure it doesn't collapse. And this, right now, we're beginning to see the effects of it on a global scale. I think right now the West has lost so much of this accumulated soft and military power that there is no coming back from that. It's going to take 3 generations of humanity to forget the genocide and what the West did to support this genocide and these wars in Western Asia. So the political changes on a global scale are undeniable at this moment. Secondly, on a military situation, we saw the West face for the first time an enemy that is able to innovate in warfare and be able to defeat the West militarily in a very short span of time. So we saw the innovations that the resistance in the extermination camp of Gaza made, the 4-dimensional warfare, underground cities and tunnels, the homemade anti-tank missiles that Hamas was using, as well as, of course, the use of those gliders to attack the Israeli bases on October 7th, the 12 bases that were captured by the resistance on that day. Then we saw Hezbollah's innovations with the use of the ATGMs as not as a tool to target only tanks during the 2024 war, but also as a pinpoint targeting mechanism to target even cameras that the Israelis had on the border of Lebanon. And now, of course, we see the innovations that are happening in Lebanon with the use of the FPVs, the quadcopter drones with the fiber optic wires that can travel for tens of kilometers and be able to destroy columns of mechanized infantry and tanks far away from the front line between the two warring parties. And finally, we saw in Iran the innovations of the use of hypersonic missiles, multi-warhead missiles, their defensive lines in the sea, the use of the Strait of Hormuz as a weapon. All of these things are innovations that we haven't seen any competitor to the United States, especially an underdog like this Axis of Resistance members, be able to come up with and to militarily defeat the West. Of course, the Algerian resistance, the Vietnamese resistance defeated the West. But that was a multi-decade battle. And it was a one party versus another. It wasn't the complete collective West imperial order versus one party, and definitely they weren't able to defeat the United States, for instance, in 40 days as Iran did, and or the continued resistance in Gaza and Lebanon.
Okay, thank you, Laith. I can add personally 3 little points to what you said, which is very clear. And the first one is that I consider personally that most probably the question 7th of October is a trap which was produced by Netanyahu, but Netanyahu fell into his own trap, I would say. This is explained, for example, by Charlie Kirks, when he says that helicopters normally take from their base to Gaza, they take 40 minutes, and there is nothing that can explain that they have taken 6 or 7 hours to go there, unless there was an order of non-intervention for letting Gaza create something which could push the reply and the genocide which was prepared for long time. The second is what I used to call the victimary credit. As you know, the Zionism has been created through what I call the victimary credit of the Shoah. And they have been hiding behind the victimary credit of the Shoah to produce something which was, the people who were living there knew what was it, but rest of the world did not understand. And Netanyahu, by doing his policy, which I would say is very openly and genocidal, has opened the eyes of the whole world, and now the opinion of United States especially is like Vietnam, which means that all the young people, especially which are anti-Zionist and pro-Palestinian, will grow up into the administration, into the business organization for 20, 30, 40 years. That is to say, the days of now you have only IPAC and a few persons who still have power, but we can see that they will disappear because you cannot fight against the water and against the sea, which is growing. That's the second remark. And this is the result of the fact that this, what I call the victimary credit, has been brought by Netanyahu, which was really the golden power of Israel until now. And the third thing that I would say is, if you see what for me is the main answer and the main result of all what is happening, what is to say in Lebanon, in Syria, in Gaza, in the occupied territories, and in Iran, is the absolute lack of power of Israel and of the global North against the resistance. That is to say, there is absolutely no result which you could say there is a political advance or a strategic advance. All what you see that has been done by Benjamin Netanyahu is a failure. Is an absolute failure. That the three remarks that I could add to what you have said. So now let's go to the second, if you like. Then the Palestinian cause. Nearly 2 years after October 7, how do you assess the current state of the Palestinian cause? Has it gained greater international support, or has the prolonged conflict fundamentally altered its future? Maybe we have answered part of it, but not completely. If you want to add something to this question, to the Palestinian cause.
Yes. Look, I slightly disagree with you in terms of the October 7th. I know.
Yes.
I know that there's a tendency in the minds of much of the humanity prior to October 7th, to where much of the people have internalized Jewish supremacy. People really think that Israel or Zionists are all-seeing, all-powerful, all-controlling. My experience with the Zionists in the United States, in Canada, where I lived in Canada for 25 years, is that they're actually puny weaklings. That me as a Palestinian in Canada, with all the limitations of my name, my color, my reputation, was able to shake the whole country by myself and shake the whole Israeli lobby by myself. Okay, I'm not saying that to say that I am something special. What I'm trying to say is that actually the Zionists, all their power is an illusion. Okay, so I have always rejected this idea that somehow and that was this idea that was actually perpetuated by Jewish anti-Zionists, okay, like the Max Blumenthals and so forth, that perpetuated this idea that somehow Netanyahu and the Israelis knew about October 7th and let it happen. This is actually a repetition of Jewish supremacy, okay? And I am against Jewish supremacy, and I don't see them as better than me or smarter than me. That doesn't mean that when October 7th happened, that the Zionists, led by Netanyahu, didn't conduct a genocide of their own people with the Hannibal Directive, or that there wasn't an internal fight. This is something that people need to also remember, that the Israeli establishment or the Zionists are not one blob. There is competitions between them and inside them. And there must have been an objection within the military of Israel to the Hannibal Directive being taken out on their own soldiers. Doesn't mean that that didn't happen. It means that there was a delay in the decision making. Remember, this was an action that nobody could predict what Hamas and the resistance did on that day. The designing of the innovation of using these gliders to fly into the bases. And in the end, there was 12 Israeli generals captured or killed on October 7th. That doesn't, indicate to me that somehow the Israelis let it happen. They wouldn't let 12 of their most important generals to be killed or captured on that day, to the point where on October 8th, the United States had to send generals to lead the battle. The Center Command of the United States landed their senior generals in Tel Aviv, where they became the commanders of the battle in Gaza. That doesn't indicate that Israel was prepared for October 7th. So
I've not said that. I will just reply to you after.
Yeah. I mean, we can argue about this for a long time.
Yeah.
But in my mind,
let me just answer on this very question.
Yes.
I don't know if you have made judo. But judo, there is something which is called in the judoka tomoe nage. Tomoe nage, it means that you are pushing your adversary, and your adversary, instead of pushing you, is coming back and is putting his foot and throwing you behind. That is to say, use the strength of the adversary. For me, it's not a lack of power to do that. It's the supreme power to use the power of the enemy to beat him. According to me, and there are different elements that that and there has been a report showing that this was prepared by Gaza and by what's his name, by the people from Gaza, and Netanyahu refused. And he refused, and he thrown out the person who has prepared this report. That is to say, for me, the thesis that this was something that they have prepared in a certain way does not mean at all that they were prepared for the consequences. That's what I mean. But sorry that I interrupt you.
No. It's okay.
You understand We are not
Yes.
completely contradictory one to the other.
Yes, yes. I actually would argue that the leaders and the Palestinian leaders, including martyr Sinwar, Yahya Sinwar,
Yeah.
actually knew that there's going to be a genocide.
Sorry.
And that it was necessary for the genocide to happen.
Exactly.
In order to bury in the garbage the Holocaust.
Exactly.
And the word anti-Semitism. Right now, because of the broadcasted Holocaust in Palestine, in Gaza, anyone that brings up the word Holocaust in terms of the Nazis and Jewish suffering and the word anti-Semitism, people laugh at them. Okay? So this is actually where you can understand that those who designed October 7th and Al-Aqsa flood predicted and knew where it's going to what's going to happen in response. Because the humiliation, the humiliation of the Israelis was so severe on October 7th that just looking at former operations of the Palestinian and Lebanese resistance that were successful, and how bad the response of the Israelis is usually in terms of targeting civilians and mass casualty events that they revert to in response to their humiliation on the battlefield. Israel has done that always. So anyone within the Palestinian leadership that designed October 7th and could see how humiliating it's going to be, could predict that there will be a genocide and that this was necessary. It is necessary to end the cycle of the slow genocide of the Palestinians, and it was necessary to bury the memory of the Holocaust and the word anti-Semitism, and to expose Jewish collective institutions in the world as tools of Jewish supremacy, imperialism, and crime. Look at today. You know, you mentioned AIPAC. AIPAC is not only dead. The importance of Jewish institutions globally right now, globally, Jewish institutions in France, in Switzerland, in Canada, and so on, all of them expose themselves as criminal institutions, from the synagogue to the lobby, okay? And that wouldn't have happened if the Palestinians didn't force the Israelis to conduct themselves in such ways, okay? So the Palestinian cause, where does it stand today? Today, the Palestinian cause stands as the primary example of human liberation. It is also the epitome of anti-imperialism and anti-colonialism. It is the compass of any human being on any part of this planet that is seeking liberation for any reason. It is the way forward for all of us as human beings. And so you had this huge shift from the Palestinian cause almost being forgotten to becoming the primary issue that humanity as a whole thinks about all the time. And yes, the new generation that is now bathed in this genocide for the last 3 years, consuming it on social media minute by minute. This generation is not going to fall under the control of the Zionists. And another thing that is important about this point is, look, I don't believe in democracy, okay? I don't think the Swiss people or the French people are really electing these garbage that are ruling them. Most humanity is much more brighter and better and more humane than the leaders that they have. And so do I think that this new generation is going to somehow get in power through elections or whatever? No. And on the contrary, what we're seeing is that the elite in the Western states are becoming more fascist and openly denying the rights of their own citizens to even representation or freedom of speech or freedom of media or what have you. So what I see actually happening in the West with this new generation growing up is that there will be civil wars. There will be full fascism coming into effect, Nazi style, Mussolini style coming into effect. There's already hints of it. You can see it in Italy with Meloni, or in Germany with the police beating women mercilessly day in, day out in the streets of Berlin, and beating children in the streets of Berlin, or the banning of Palestine Action and the mass incarceration of people in the United Kingdom. We're moving towards full fascism in the West. And the only hope for this new generation that right now has collective consciousness is for them to rebel. And maybe we will be starting to see military formations in the style of the 1960s and 70s, like the Red Armies that we saw in Italy, in Germany, and so forth, that happened in the 70s, and to come back into focus. So Palestine and the Palestinian cause is the center of human liberation right now, and that couldn't have happened without the actions of October 7th.
Okay, Laith, I'm not going to answer because we have to continue the questions. Let's say that I agree partly. I think that probably the real situation is more complex. I agree on the question of liberation of people, which is something that is the purpose of my second book. I wrote 3 books, and the second was named Time of Fracturation, and I think that there are going to be breaches, not necessarily fascist regime, because there is also another war which is going to act and probably break the European system before it is trying to organize itself as a totalitarian system. But my personal idea is that it won't succeed because it is too much linked to the Ukrainian regime, and it will fall down together. So, but let's say it's a possibility. Now let's go to the third question. Lebanon and the future. Let just me say something that it's 6:15. By 6:30, 6:35, I have to leave. So I propose we have 8 questions. We continue and take our time to answer question by question. If we don't finish the 8 questions, maybe we have an occasion to do a second part to finish, because I personally consider that this exchange that we are having is very important and very useful. So I propose you this method if you agree. Now,
yes, sure.
Question number 3. Lebanon and the future of the resistance. Lebanon has suffered extensive destruction and the loss of many political and military leaders during the conflict. At the same time, there is intense domestic debate over the legitimacy of the Lebanese resistance, of course. Now, do you evaluate this debate, and what do you believe will be the future role of the resistance in Lebanon?
Yes, we look at, of course, those losses that Hezbollah suffered during the 2024 confrontation. And when we look at it at that moment, we can realize also, maybe it's hard for people to see this from outside our region, but the power of sacrifice and martyrdom in the struggles against a oppressive, more powerful enemy, how much it is important. So yes, Hezbollah suffered with the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah and the terrorist pager attack and the assassinations of some of its leadership, military leadership. But as an organization, now it is actually more powerful. Not to say that we needed these people to be martyred, but because it forced an organization that started as a militia that then became a semi-army in the battle inside Syria, the war on Syria, to reorganize itself to becoming a militia again, which makes it harder to track. The war on Syria, almost all the commanders of Lebanon's Hezbollah's armed wing got exposed in the war on Syria. They were on the front lines. There's all this intelligence that is gathering information about them. So it was easy to target them in 2024. Now, nobody knows who's the commanders of what. Hezbollah is back to militia force, not formations, not semi-army formations. So they are stronger. The other thing is that when we look at the surveys of the Lebanese population, given the broadcasted genocide in Gaza, given the fact that the Wahhabi death squads that took control of Syria went on rampage against the Christian, Shia, Druze, and Alawis, whoever was in Lebanon that was critical of Hezbollah's military actions, they have now seen what happens in Gaza, what happens in Syria, and have switched sides. So we know that the majority of Lebanese, 80-somewhat%, are against the existence of Israel and against Hezbollah throwing away its arms. So that's done. We also look at, so the propaganda war, the same way that the rest of humanity awakened because of the broadcasts of the genocide. Anyone that was also, the vast majority of people that were affected by imperialist propaganda in Lebanon have now been schooled by watching by their own eyes the reality around them. And you add to it the victory of Iran against the United States, and now we see even parties that were silent starting to take positions with the resistance. So we know that 22 parties have already signed on rejecting the agreement signed by the president and prime minister with Israel. And there is no more future for President Aoun and Prime Minister Salam in the country. When we say the 22 parties, that's the vast majority of political parties in the country, representing the Christian, Druze, Shia, and Sunnis. So the future for resistance in Lebanon is much brighter than it was a year ago.
Okay. Laith, I fully agree with you. I can just add two little points. One is to say that for me as a foreigner, one thing which I'm absolutely surprised is the weakness of Tzahal in this, the strategic weakness and the operative weakness of Tzahal in this operation, whereas they perfectly know the place. They have been there several times and they have to go back in 2000, in 2006, etc. And they still come back with the same mistake that they have done. And in particular, they have not prepared to the drone war, where we see that the droneization is all over the world now, in Iran, in Russia, in Turkey, everywhere, and they are not prepared, which shows me that there is really a problem of, let's say, the problem in the command, political command of Israel, which are not integrating, future modernity, what we call it in France, décadence, well, how do you call that? Decadency, proper decadence. And the other thing is that I'm absolutely surprised by the fact that a president of a country which has been recently elected is negotiating with the people who are invading his country an agreement to take out the weapons of his own resistance. How can a president who is saying that be kept in power? He has lost completely all his steam by doing that. Which, you know, I have a lot of friends in Paris. Some of them are Christian Lebanese, which, as you know, have a position with Israel, which is, let's say, at the minimum ambiguous. But I told them, how can a president who is choosing his enemy against his own resistance people, you know, he should say, invaders out. And then I make my own cooking with my own people. That's an answer of a president. So I am sure that this regime is already almost finished. That's what I add. But I see that you confirm, in fact, what I'm saying. So now let's go to the question. Now, number 4, some political actors in Lebanon advocate a normalization process with Israel, while significant segment of Lebanese society strongly oppose such a policy. That's what you say. What political, social, and regional consequences could such a normalization process have for Lebanon? If you consider that normalization is a possibility, which you can consider that it's not possible, which is my case.
Yes. I personally also believe that it's never going to happen. The vast majority of Lebanese people, including in the Christian population, are against it. You know, when we look at the situation in Lebanon, you are right. The president and prime minister are going to be removed. Their political career is ended already now. It's either going to be a violent removal or they're going to step away by themselves. But you know, that moment of power that the United States had after the capture of Damascus is gone. The effects of that moment are done, and so I think this is not going to happen. But you know, let's pretend that there's going to be normalization in Lebanon and try to predict what's going to happen if that happens. Well, we have the example in Egypt and the example in Jordan, where they signed the peace treaties with the Jewish colony. And up until today, it actually never brought them any advantages, right? So look at what happened in Jordan just yesterday. You know, the Jordanians risked their own government and state and military to defend Israel from Iran's missiles and drones during the 44-day war. And what did the Israelis pay them back with? They just cut the water on them. You know, Jordan is the most water risk country in the region. And it depends on the Jewish colony giving it recycled water from its sewage. By the way, if you go to Jordan, don't take a shower. You know, it's better for you to stay there without taking a shower than taking a shower there, because you'll be showering in recycled Israeli sewer water, and you'll have a lot of skin diseases and you may lose your hair, but if you're younger. So
I don't have such a problem.
yes, yes. So clearly the Jordanians.
I've not been to Jordan. It's just natural.
Yes. But so clearly the Jordanians didn't gain anything from being lackeys to the Israeli colony and normalizing with it and giving it all it needs. Similarly with Egypt, you'd think, given that Egypt is the most populous Arabic country with a huge army and what have you, that the Israelis would be throwing flowers at them and projects and money and uplifting them and maybe letting them win the World Cup. But no, the Israelis love humiliating Egypt and the Egyptians, right? And so there's nothing to gain for Lebanon from normalization with Israel. In fact, it will be losing more and more if it does.
Yes, I agree with you. I would just want to add one little point. I'm actually interested by a philosopher, a Jewish philosopher, which name is Yeshayahu Leibovitz, which you probably know. He has translated his books in French, and he's explaining the theory of the Zionist state, saying that a country which has never deposited the frontier is not a state. It is a state that is organized himself for permanent war. Because otherwise you must say, okay, this is my frontier, this is my frontier, here I exist, here you exist, so I must have normal relation with you unless we have problems that we have to solve either by the diplomacy or by the war at the worst. But we are not in this system because this country has no real, has not clearly said if he exists and what does it exist for. Understand what I mean? Which means tomorrow he can say, okay, Egypt is for me, I consider why. Because it's like this. Lebanon is for me, not only the south, but all Lebanon. Then Iraq is for me. Where does it stop? What is that? I personally don't understand that a country that has never deposited the place of his frontiers can be considered by United Nations as a country in itself. It has a bigger problem because it means the only thing we shall believe is in permanent war. And this is where I think that normalization is not possible. Theoretically, it is not possible. This is what Leibovitz, I'm not inventing that. That is what Yeshayahu Leibovitz is explaining, and I think it is very true. Now, let's go to the following question. Question Iran, Syria. Question number 5. Syria is entering a new political phase under Ahmad al-Shara. There have been reports of contacts with various international actors, while Israel has expanded military operations inside Syrian territory. We know that. How do you assess Syria's current strategic position, and what challenges does it face in preserving his sovereignty and territorial unity? I think this is a very good question. What do you think?
Yeah, well, first off, I personally never call him al-Shara because al-Shara clan and family are related to me, and I know everybody in the Shara family, and they have all said they don't know this man. Al-Julani most probably is either a Saudi or an actual Israeli, like Eli Cohen in the 1960s attempted to infiltrate the Syrian government. Remember, he was branded Al-Julani in the beginning to kind of have that propaganda point that somehow the Syrian government under the Assad rule were selling out Al-Julan, the Golan Heights, and that somehow Al-Julani is going to come and liberate them. That was the propaganda point with branding him with the name of Julani. And now they branded him with a Shara name because the Shara clan is the most important clan in the south of Syria. And also the former vice president of Syria, Farouk al-Shara, who was also the foreign affairs minister for Syria for a couple of decades, who resigned at the beginnings of the war on Syria from his position as vice president because he didn't want to be involved in the war. This is why they rebranded Al-Julani as Al-Shara to try to take legitimacy from the name of Farouk al-Shara, the former vice president, and to implicate the Shara clan in the south of Syria. Well, right now we see, of course, the Zionists attacking Dar'a province, which is the home of Al-Shara family and the Shara clan, and Al-Julani, who's now branded Al-Shara, not coming to their defense, neither of his family or the family he claims to belong to, which rejects him, and or the province that he supposedly comes from, Dar'a. So Syria right now has zero sovereignty. There is no state called Syria. Let's be very clear. I'm Syrian, and I tell you there is no more Syria as a state. There is a land and a people called Syria, but there is no state called Syria. There is territories that are occupied by the Turks, territories occupied by the Americans, territories that are occupied by the Israelis. There's regions that are out of control of Al-Julani, like Suwaida, parts of the coast in the mountains. And there is Wahhabi death squads that are ruling the cities. That's as far as they rule. They rule the major cities, and that's it. In fact, in the last 2-3 months, actually, maybe the last 6 months, the Turkish government withdrew a lot of the international Wahhabi death squad mercenaries from all around the world that were brought to Syria to fight the government. Those Wahhabi death squads have been now exported to the Sahel region to destabilize Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, to the Horn of Africa to destabilize the central government of Somalia, and also to Ukraine to continue the war against Russia. So Al-Julani's regime is very weak right now. It has around only 60,000-70,000 fighters under its rule. They can barely keep traffic, in the major cities. They cannot fight any war, and they will follow. Al-Julani will follow the dictates of what Washington, Ankara, and Tel Aviv tell him to do.
Yes, I agree with you, and I personally see this Al-Julani, as a man walking on a rope, and trying to, at the same time, play with 3 or 4 balls while he's walking on the rope. The only thing I can say is that he has not fallen yet completely, which means that at the same time, I agree with you that he is obviously extremely weak, but at the same time, I don't see, maybe because of the propaganda, that this country has come into complete civil war between the different places. That is, he has obtained from the US that they lift the sanctions, at least. He has obtained that the president of France is coming to his country. That is to say, he is walking on the rope. And this can be maybe the only positive thing that is happening, which I consider in itself is a good reply to most probably what Israel is looking for, because Israel wants everything around his country to become pieces. And regarding Lebanon, the agreement of Washington with Aoun and Israel, one of the politicians in Israel was saying, we have created the ferments of civil war, of a new civil war in Lebanon, and that is the best thing we have done. This is what he was seeing, this agreement. So I consider that Jolani has a certain skill of putting together things, but basically, I agree with you. Now let's go to the following question. Question 6. Iran, after the recent conflict, with the new things that have happened since yesterday, as you know, following the recent confrontation involving Israel, the United States and Iran, maybe many observers disagree on the outcome. Has Iran emerged strategically stronger, weaker, or has the regional balance simply become more unstable? What role do you expect Iran to play in the coming years?
Yeah, I think the war on Iran have flipped the power balance in the region. The United States, in its hopes of saving the Jewish colony from its predetermined demise, risked everything to try to destroy Iran and its power, and in reality, in the end, destroyed its own power, the United States in Western Asia. So, of course, we saw the destruction of all the American bases in the region, and the beginning of collapse of many of the vassal regimes in the Arabian Peninsula that have been protected by the British and then the American presence for the last 80 years, and have been the most important asset in the global imperialist capital system, with the oil and gas being the backbone of international capitalism. So a lot of things were risked by the United States to try to defeat Iran, and they've lost all of that. So now we're seeing already the results of this defeat of the United States come into focus. It doesn't mean that the United States is going to accept this defeat or it's not going to come back to war. I think we'll be back in war very soon. But we're already seeing the effects of this loss that the United States suffered. So whether it is the reemergence of Yemen as a regional power, the importance of and the control of the Hormuz Strait, the possibility of Yemen controlling Bab el-Mandeb, the retreat of even the propaganda war that Qatar and the United Arab Emirates and Saudi were fighting against Iran. They've changed all their propaganda over the last 2 months since the defeat of the United States to kind of stop their constant propaganda against Shia populations and against Iran. So I see the balance of power shifting to a point of no return. The United States in its 40-day war on Iran used all its weapons at its disposal, save for the use of nuclear attack. And at some point, the losses of the United States were so severe that Trump threatened to use the nuclear weapons with his threats to eradicate the Iranian civilization. And we saw how the whole world came out against that, including the Pope of Catholicism. So I think we have at that point past the possibility of use of nuclear weapons. I still think there is maybe a possibility of use of nuclear weapons if we return to a new phase of this war, but not by the United States, but by Israel. Because as we see, the desperation of the Israelis as their imperialist sponsor gets weakened and weakened, unable to control their actions as Israelis, but also unable to provide them the full umbrella of protection that they've got used to for 80 years. Now we will see, maybe if we return to a new war, that Israel may use a nuclear weapon. But once that happens, by the way, we will be in a world war, and other actors on this planet, like North Korea, like Belarus, like Pakistan, may use nuclear weapons on the Jewish colonies. So we're at this moment, I think we've passed. We're ending the age of Western domination of humanity. And there's many indications for that. One, of course, the end of the West's ability to project power through naval force. 600 years that gave advantage to the West, European civilization, to project power through naval force. That ended with Yemen and now ended with Iran. The end of domination by air force, as we saw in Iran, the war right now, and the solutions that were innovated by Iran to counter the F-35s and all of those things. And of course, the collapse of any moral or propaganda power that the West had over humanity. Those are things that are indicators of end of 600 years of domination, not only just the issue of Palestine or West Asia. It's a global human change that is there's no going back from that point.
Yes, I agree with you, Laith. I can add 2 points. One is that there is an actor which we don't see, but is very active in this war, which is China, which is obviously behind Iran, and most probably, according to me and according to interview that I've seen from Professor Marandi, behind an agreement between Iran and Saudi Arabia, which means that there is really a change in the power of the region, and it's not a mistake that some of the geopoliticians, American analysts, have said that this war result will be worse than Vietnam War, because in Vietnam War, United States have lost a few soldiers, a certain quantity of soldiers, not few, but a certain quantity, but he has lost more ego than the real geopolitical power, because Vietnam is far away from the United States. But really, I would say the American power has two, let's say, real castles to protect himself. One is Europe, Occidental Europe, and the other is Middle East. And once Middle East is going back to the Chinese influence, obviously, it's an enormous loss, because United States is losing the control of their own money at the same time, because all these countries will be selling in yuan the monopoly of the dollar is properly affected. That is one point. And the other point is that even though Trump has bombed today last night 80 different places near Bandar Abbas and near Hormuz, because he wants to weaken the power of the Iranians in the Hormuz, to try to make it in such a way that the all the boats can go by the way they want without the Iranian control, we have seen that Iranians has reacted immediately with 85 bombings on Bahrain, on Kuwait, and I don't forget that at the end of the day, the country which has the finger on the red button of the nuclear bomb is Iran, because it's not a military bomb, it's an economic bomb. The world economic bomb is in the hands of Iran, who just have to destroy the desalinization plants of the Gulf countries, and all the Gulf is everybody is going out from there and back to Europe or anywhere, and this comes back to the desert in 24 hours. So at the end of the day, I have absolutely no illusion that Iran will get his. Why did Trump sign this agreement in Versailles? Not because he wanted to go into peace, but just he wanted to get out from the red zone where the price of the Brent was over $100 per dollars, and it has come back to $74. But now, only by the bombing, it has gained 5%. That is to say, it will immediately come to $100 or $110. And when it is there, Trump cannot do anything than say, okay. So we are going back to this place. So I'm sure of the result of this negotiation. Okay, dear Laith, I'm sorry that there is a few questions, but the time is off for me because I had calibrated with 1 hour, but maybe we can ask to Abdeljalil to create a few more questions. Like there were still 3 questions about the Gulf, about the future of Middle East, 2 questions, and we'll have the pleasure to make a new exchange, which was a real pleasure for me. So thank you very much, and let's meet again, hopefully, if God wants and if Abdeljalil wants.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, Francois, for having me. And yeah, I'm ready for discussions anytime. And inshallah, we'll see you soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Right,
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.